Hi, I'm Ellie
Hello.
Barrett.
And I'm Kerry Tenby.
I'm an artist and a sculptor and a researcher living and working in Lancaster. And I make sculpture from everyday materials, mostly materials that you find in the supermarket or in the shops, to think about the different ways that material makes meaning in my work.
And I am a visual artist based in the Northwest. And I use materials to make artwork, which investigates something to do with our individual identity or the collective identity of a community.
And together, Kerry and I have founded Material Arts Network, or MAN. We are a group of artists and makers who believe that looking closely at material can reveal more information about each other, our identities and the world around us. We're just starting out with MAN, but we'd really like it to be a supportive place for artists and makers in any discipline who think in this way to share research and ideas. We want to be a network to keep in touch with each other, and we want to be an accessible space which considers how material can widen participation in art.
So the purpose of this video today is to introduce our first workshop, which we've called Man's Guide to Prospecting, which is a resource and a workbook. And the video will walk you through the activities and information within this PDF, which can also be downloaded from the Material Arts Network website, which will give you more details at the end.
So to introduce Man's Guide to Prospecting, it's a two-part workshop exploring how and why artists discover and collect materials to make work, and why this is meaningful, where meaning comes from in this activity. So part one is this workbook and this video walking you through it. Part two is going to be a live discussion event on Zoom. It's taking place on Friday, the 5th of March at 6:30 p.m. It's free to attend. There's an Eventbrite to sign up, which we will give you more details of at the end of this video. And it's also hosted by Abingdon Studios in Blackpool, who've been supporting this project. We'd really like to invite people to not only to come along, but to speak at this event in sort of 10-minute slots, just to present your own responses to part one, to this workbook, and talk us through your own discoveries. So if you're interested in speaking, as well as coming along, please get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you.
So there's kind of two parts to the workbook that we're showing you here today. The first part is information, which will offer ideas about what we are calling prospecting, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail later on. And the second part of the workbook walks you through the activity of going prospecting and considering the things that you might find. So anywhere that you see a white space within the PDF, we really want to encourage you to kind of document the things that you're finding, the things that you're making, and that might take the form of a drawing or a sketch or a question that you might want to ask us. So we really focus on material for lots of different reasons throughout this workshop. We're looking at how it affects our individual identity. We want to ask more questions about our understanding of materials and what do we think when we encounter certain materials, and how it affects ourselves and the environment around it. So in other words, we think of materials as like a sponge that soaks up all this information about places and people and things that have happened there, and how we come into contact with these materials. So we believe that exploring and making with these materials can help us learn more about each other and the world around us.
So on this page, these are some words that have come from discussions that Kerry and I have had over the past few months, in ways that we think of material as kind of contributing meaning, critical meaning to an artwork. But we've also left some more spaces for you to add your own thoughts and ideas and the ways that you think of material. And we're really interested to hear your suggestions. So we'll be discussing this at part two.
So we keep mentioning this word prospecting. So on this page, we just want to talk a little bit about what we mean by prospecting. What is prospecting? So the word prospecting is something that we've come up to refer to the activity of going out and discovering materials, finding objects and materials in spaces, and how we use those materials to make artwork. So there's some definitions in the bubbles on this page for you to have a think about. And there is some questions at the bottom as well that you might want to look at and ask yourself as you think about the next few pages when you go prospecting.
So here we want to elaborate a little more about what we mean when we talk about prospecting. What actually are the activities that we carry out when we are prospecting? And really, it can happen anywhere and everywhere at any time, at any place. And every artist is going to have a different way of searching for materials and collecting materials to make work. And this is whether you use with traditional materials intended for art or not, materials that you find in other places. I work with salt dough, so I find my materials as I'm doing my grocery shop, my weekly shop at the supermarket. That's really important to me, that I am shopping for edible materials alongside other people going through similar kind of activities of buying food. I find that kind of relates my work to other forms of gathering materials for everyday reasons. That's really important in my practice. How about you, Kerry?
Prospecting for me is an active activity that I go out with the idea of finding new materials. So I often spend time walking in familiar places or nostalgic places, places that feel familiar to me. And materials really will either jump out of the space and catch my eye, or I will be specifically looking for materials to make new work.
So two different approaches there. And we've added some suggestions for where you might be interested in going out and searching for materials. But also we've left a space here for you to kind of have your own idea about a place or a time that you might be interested in going prospecting.
So now we get to the fun part where we want you to kind of get involved with this activity of prospecting. So here is where you start. After you've had a think about all the information that we've talked about on the previous few pages, and you've made some ideas about where you like to go and what you might find in those spaces, we want you to go and engage with the activity, and to make sure that you take the workbook with you when you go, because there's going to be lots of opportunities to record the materials that you find and the things that you make from it.
And here are some prompts and our suggestions based on the things that we think about and the meaningful things that we've identified through some of the discussions we've had over the previous few months. Just different questions that might help you to reveal sources of meaning that come from materials, but also come from finding them as well. Kerry, thinking about the places that you go out to find materials, what do those places mean to you?
So as I mentioned before, I often go looking for materials to make my artwork in familiar spaces, or spaces which have kind of nostalgic memories attached to them. So Blackpool is my hometown. I've grown up by the coast, and I live near another part of the coast in the northwest now. So I spend a lot of time in coastal locations looking at architecture and materials that you might find there. I also spend a lot of time wandering around industrial estates collecting scrap materials, not because I know that there will be a lot of scrap materials, but those pieces also feel kind of familiar and nostalgic to me because I spent a lot of time wandering around industrial estates when I was a child as well. So the questions on this page follow on from the previous questions. More think yourself whilst you're out and about collecting materials. So a really important question that I ask myself when I'm finding materials is what does that material mean to me? What does it make me feel? And does it remind me of anything? And that's really important to me when I'm finding stuff. I don't know whether that's the same for you, Ellie.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the reasons I'm drawn to salt dough is because it's so moldable and malleable. It relates to kind of, everyone's got kind of childhood nostalgia about it, which is really important. And again, the fact that it can be found in the supermarket feels like it's much more accessible material, and that's important. And I think My feelings change as I work with it. The limitations that I thought were there at the beginning have now understand it as being able to do lots of different things. And I see it as a kind of perfect sculptural material almost, so my feelings definitely change as I'm working with it. But it is the place that I get it from, always continues to have meaning in the work. So on this page, after you've found your material, you've been prospecting and recording your thoughts, you might even have found an object as a material as well. So it doesn't need to be something that's necessarily raw, but we want you to capture it and explore it in different ways. So in the two bubbles, we've suggested that you draw it and describe it, but you can respond in any way that you want to. But just kind of getting to know the material a little bit more by observing it and thinking about its different characteristics before you start to make with it.
So similar to the what did you find page, we've got a what did you make page with the same two spaces for you to record anything that you might make from the materials that you found whilst you were prospecting. And again, you can be as creative as possible with these responses. We don't just want words and pictures, you know, maybe you'd like to take a rubbing of one of the materials that you're using, or draw some diagrams of what you kind of made from those materials that you found and record them on this page.
And then here, finally, this is a space for you to reflect on the activity in any way that you like. So we've given you various prompts and questions over the last few pages, but here is a place for you to kind of think about how you responded to the activity. Did your understanding of material change? Is it helpful to think of prospecting as an activity to find sources of meaning in the work? Yeah, it's just a place for you to kind of reflect on how useful the activity was for you.
So for me, after collecting materials and making things from them, the activity doesn't really stop there for me and continue. So on this page, we've included some more ideas for activities following on from prospecting, and that might be including other people around you, friends or families or people that you work with, and asking them similar questions about materials or prospecting as an activity. Or it might be that you start to combine materials from different trips of prospecting to make new work or new things. And also, for me, when I go out collecting materials, I tend to be quite forensic about recording where I found the material, and asking myself questions constantly about the materials I find. So in these speech bubbles, we've put some ideas for further activities that you might want to engage in.
And that's the end of our part 1 of Man's Guide to Prospecting, the end of the workbook. We really hope you find these activities interesting and that they help you reveal more information that material can carry into the work. We'd just like to finish off by reminding you that part 2 of Man's Guide to Prospecting, which will be our live Zoom event, will take place on the 5th of March by Abingdon Studios. You can find the link to sign up for free on Eventbrite by visiting our website, which is the bottom left of this page, so materialartnetwork.hotglue.me. And again, if you would like to speak in a sort of 10-minute slot during this session about your responses to part 1, we would really love to hear from you, so please reach out to us via email or Instagram. We'd just like to finish also by saying big thank you to Abingdon Studios for supporting us through this project, and to Arts Council England as well. We hope to see you at part 2.
Have fun prospecting.
Bye.
Bye.